Good evening, everyone. If I can ask for commissioners and community to please take your seats. Did you get what you needed? Do you need 2 minutes? Okay, they asked for 2 minutes, so I'll give you 2 minutes. Did you need time, Ms. Tracy? Did you need time? Okay, did you want to finish? Because I can wait. You can wait. 2 minutes. Okay. Okay. That means you got 2 minutes to mix and mingle. My friend from the Post-Dispatch, I see you. Good to see you. Thanks for coming.
Is it 2 misses or 3 misses?
Do we need to make a new name tag? Oh, you got it.
I got it.
Okay. All right, we're getting ready to start. Well, good evening to everyone. This is the 13th Ferguson Commission meeting. My name is Bethany Johnson-Javois. I'm the Managing Director of the Ferguson Commission. This meeting is called to order June 22nd, 2015. We are here at St. Louis Community College at Meramec, 11333 Big Bend, St. Louis, Missouri, 63122. Right, Pat? All right. Commissioners in attendance tonight, would you please state when I call your name by saying present? Reverend Starsky Wilson. Present. Rich McClure. Present. Kevin Albrand. Rasheen Aldridge. Pastor Tracy Blackman. Present. T.R. Carr. Gabe Gore. Becky James Hatter. Daniel Isom. Scott Negwer. Brittany Packnett is on her way. Felicia Pulliam. Pat Sly. Grayling Tobias has an excused absent. Byron Watson should be making his arrival, and Rose Wynn Miller also has an excused absence. Thank you, commissioners, for coming tonight. We do have quorum. At this time, we have an invocation that is coming from Father Joseph Weber, who is with St. Justin Martyr Ecumenical Commission. Chair, please welcome him as he comes. Thank you.
Thank you. Let us remember we're in God's presence. Loving God and Father, we are grateful for your gift of life to us. Building on this great gift of life, we are grateful for the opportunity to come together as one community, seeking your guidance for the future of our metropolitan area and our country. Our hearts hurt because of the violence that's plagued our community and great nation for far too long. We mourn with our brothers and sisters in Charleston, South Carolina, just as we mourn the violence that took place here in our own metropolitan community last August, and still in many ways takes place today. We ask your guidance in this gathering this evening so that we can live in peace with our brothers and sisters. Some of us have been directly harmed by violence. We need healing, to which only you can lead us. Our earth is a beautiful mother who opens her arms to embrace us, as Pope Francis reminded us this past week. Our Creator, you, O Lord our God, asks that we respect all the children of the earth as we seek to embrace the good in each other. Each of us are called to be instruments of peace, respecting one another, recognizing the gifts each of us brings, and striving to bring forth peace and justice for all. Give us, Lord God, open ears to hear one another, open eyes to recognize the beauty in each other, and open hearts to strive to love one another as you love us. We make this prayer in your holy name. Amen.
Thank you, Father Weber, for that invocation. At this time, Pam McIntyre, please come at this time and give us a welcome.
Good evening. I'm Pam McIntyre. I'm the president of St. Louis Community College's Meramec and Wildwood campus. It's my pleasure this evening to welcome the Ferguson Commission and you, the members of the community, to St. Louis Community College's Meramec campus. It is our pleasure to provide this location for this very important meeting. St. Louis Community College has a strong commitment of outreach to local organizations, to businesses, and citizens. We have partnered in a variety of different ways with not-for-profits, chambers of commerce, and community-based organizations in order to increase the quality of life for everyone. And we are very proud of our comprehensive services, both our transfer degree programs and our career and vocational education programs. Each year, students who annually enroll in our credit programs, our continuing education and workforce training programs, number more than 68,000. We empower these students to continue their education and to secure employment. And we also contribute to the economic growth and development of the St. Louis region. And tonight, it is our pleasure to serve you. Thank you.
Thank you, President McIntyre. Thank you for being here, and thank you, Father, for calling us to reframe our thinking. And thank all of you for being here tonight. My name is Rich McClure. I'm one of the co-chairs of the commission. I'm pleased to serve with my friend and brother, Reverend Starsky Wilson, and we're pleased to be here on the Meramec campus. This past week, we've been reminded again that there are far too many lives that are cut short by violence. We've seen the murders of 9 members of the Emmanuel AME Church in Charleston in a violent and horrific act clearly motivated by abject racism. This has been weighing on the hearts and minds of our region and on our country this past weekend, because it's been so clear that our brothers and sisters who gathered to pray lost their lives because of the color of their skin. And they lost their lives because they had welcomed into their presence to join in prayer and Bible study the one who perpetrated the act. There are far too many people whose hate makes them capable of this kind of act. There are far too many people that are drawn to the kind of motivations that were shown. There are many, many people working for peace. And there are many more wondering what they can and should do to make a difference. So this underscores that why we as a region must confront our reality. We must face the underlying causes of our own regional racial issues. We must act to begin walking that long path toward addressing these issues, working toward reconciliation and healing. We feel anger, and justifiably so, at these events. We want to feel forgiveness as well. The planned delegation from Cincinnati that we had hoped would be here tonight could not be here because of the trauma their community has experienced. A 27-year veteran of the police force is dead and his family is grieving. A troubled young man is dead and his family is grieving. A community that has worked so hard over the past 10+ years on citizen-police relationships is working now to come to grips with this tragic situation. And it strikes me today that churches are holding services and prayer meetings, and they're struggling to balance being open and welcoming with protecting the safety of their members. Officers are headed out on calls and patrol with the tragedy of Cincinnati and in New Orleans recently on their minds. And families are worried about safety in their neighborhoods for their young people. Because the Cincinnati delegation needed to stay with their city, understandably so, tonight our team has pivoted and they've worked very hard to plan a meeting to address our individual, regional, and national trauma that has been being felt by so many. This is the right thing to do, to lean into this time and provide an example of a safe place to process trauma and toxic stress issues and the impact we know that they have on individuals and on communities. So our focus tonight is on the process of healing communities that have endured community-level trauma. And we do that thank you to the support of the Robert Wood Johnson Foundation. The Commission's work focuses on developing policy recommendations that seek to address the root causes of systemic and structural inequities in our region. And thus our work as a commission tonight will focus on a couple of task force reports in those spaces. Through our work, through listening and engaging with the community, it's become abundantly clear that we must recognize and address the very real community trauma that has occurred, and for some, that continues to occur. We've heard at our previous meetings through expert testimony by the Regional Health Commission and by the Missouri Foundation for Health that research about trauma and toxic stress points to these factors as underlying causes of poor health and undesirable educational and occupational outcomes for individuals, families, and communities. Community members that have participated in our own polling and our own survey work have identified stress as one of the top 3 issues that is greatly impacting our communities and our health. So the work of the Commission seeks to be informed by this and by other communities that have experienced similar events and hope that we can have unique learning experiences that will lead us to positive outcomes. Starsky?
Thanks, Rich. Again, we add our thanks to those who have come, inviting you, appreciating that all of you have accepted the invitation to come and be a part of this critical conversation for our region and, quite frankly, for the nation. We are reminded on today in reflection of the events of last week, that we deal with historical and structural matters, and we must respond to them in ways that seek to reform structure in as much as we seek to reform the context of relationships. Ralph Ellison, in the 1950s, author of The Invisible Man, wrote in one of his essays that we can tell the story of American history. He understands and suggests that we can tell the story on a stage, a scene, and a set that is made up of a giant Negro, trussed up to be the platform of the language that we use, the scene that we use to tell American history. He uses this imagery of this great giant to suggest that slavery is the foundation upon which we have lived, we have played out our history. Not many moons later, on April 4th, 1967, 1 year to the day before his death, Dr. King stood in the pulpit of Riverside Church in his Beyond Vietnam speech, or the speech that was titled A Time to Break Silence, and suggested perhaps three other giant forces of racism, extreme materialism that led to poverty and leads to poverty, and militarism, as giant forces that continue to form and shape the life that he lived, the life that we live in America, and the one that we live today. As a clergyman, I am reminded of these giant forces because yesterday, those of us who used the lectionary were drawn to 1 Samuel chapter 17, where the story of David and Goliath is told. So the question is, how will we, those of us who did not come for a battle or a fight, face down the great giants that come to us, challenging our people, calling us to question ourselves, our choices, and our reality? Will we face these giants, or will we walk away? Will we do so adequately? Will we use the same tools that those who have given us, who came before, used unsuccessfully? Or will we use the things that have been placed in our hands? What has been placed in our hands is a discussion about policy, structural matters. It may be helpful, it may feel good to have interracial gatherings for dialogue, to do so in churches and in community spaces. But racism visits us structurally, and so we must address it structurally as well. Extreme materialism manifests itself in the greed that happens structurally, and so we must address economic inequity structurally. And militarism that we find that allows someone to take the lives of others in a church with the gift of a gun given to him by his family with ease of access is something that happens structurally. It is governed by policy. We must address these things with policy as well. And so this is the conversation we come to, not one to invite people to feel good, but rather to invite people to the difficult work of addressing the structures that create a scenario where a 21-year-old who is moved upon himself by the giants of racism and materialism and militarism will go in and take the lives of others. This tragedy has created trauma for each and every one of us. And we were to hear tonight from representatives who called forth, one, through the work of the clergy of a Black United Front, a clergy leader who worked in advocacy and activism and organizing to create a resistance to call the question of policy, and those who sat down with him and those in the community to develop a policy solution after a young man had been cut down in the streets of Cincinnati. That policy solution was the Cincinnati Collaborative Agreement. While it is cited as one of the most comprehensive and innovative plans ever put in place to improve police-community relations in 2002 in response to similar tragedies, we recall that while we take an opportunity now to be thoughtful not just about the trauma that has been visited upon us, but about policies that can be put in place to help us to respond to that trauma. And so on tonight, knowing that that officer and a citizen were killed in gunfire in Cincinnati last Friday, and those representatives will not be with us, The commission wants to lean more into this moment and provide a space tonight for community members to process the effect of trauma, community-level trauma and toxic stress. Toxic stress that, when combined with that giant of extreme materialism, finds itself among poor people we have already found in the data that we have seen kills them as well. And so following the public open mic and polling session of this meeting, the agenda has changed to include facilitated small group breakout sessions in which we'll talk about the trauma that has been visited upon us and perhaps be thoughtful and be faithful enough to consider policies that may allow that kind of healing of trauma, the restoration of resources to support that kind of healing and put in place to avoid such in the future. In addition, Commission business this evening will offer a thorough update of the work of the Commission that's been undertaken in the areas of citizen law enforcement relation, municipal courts and governance, child well-being and educational equity, and economic inequity and opportunity. There will be sufficient and significant calls to action in the areas of child well-being and economic inequity and opportunity as well. At this time, we'll begin our portion for public open mic. Allowing 20 minutes for such, Ms. Jerica Franks of Vector Communications will provide us leadership in this area.
Good evening, everyone. So normally at this time, we would allow the public to speak for about 2 minutes. It's an open discussion, but I have been just informed that we didn't have anyone sign up. So we do have the option, if you do have any comments that you would like to leave, there are 2 whiteboards in the back that have Post-it notes and pens for you to just leave questions, suggestions, and comments. But again, I do want to open up the floor just in case someone has changed their mind to quickly speak. This is, again, a 2-minute opportunity for you to share with us your thoughts, comments, questions, suggestions. And we do take note of this as well, so. Okay, well, again, we do have 2 whiteboards in the back, so if you have any questions, suggestions, or comments that you would like to leave, you are more than welcome to do so. Thank you.
All right, good evening. Good evening. All right, good to see you. So because we do not have public open mic tonight, we're going to move to our audience polling, as we call it. This is a space where you can participate, and we ask you to participate. So right now we have volunteers and staffers giving out keypads. So if you don't have a keypad at this moment, it should be on your way. Raise your hand if you don't actually have a keypad and you don't see it coming your way. I think we have a gentleman in the back right there. Okay. So then everyone has a keypad? All right. So if you have never used a keypad before to do polling, raise your hand. That's all right. It's a safe space. I'll walk you through it. So generally what we do, this is what we do every meeting. It's our tradition. We try to get a sense of who's in the room, who makes up our public for the night. And so we ask you a set of demographic questions, and then we go into topical considerations based on the discussion for the evening, okay? So we have a total of 13 questions for tonight, and that's what we'll be polling. So we won't be able to tell who does what or anything. So that's just background information, okay? So if you look at your keypad, you'll see that there should be, I think, nine buttons there. Some have letters and some have numbers. They're shared. I'll ask you a question, and you'll see answer choices actually on both sides of the screen, and you pick the answer choice that best corresponds with your truth. So we'll actually do a test run, a practice run, to get you warmed up, and then we'll move from there, okay? So let's start with the practice. You'll notice that right there at the top right-hand corner, polling is closed, and you also can see the responses there. So your answers won't be locked until it says polling is open, okay? And it saves the last answer you put in. So if you change your answer quickly before the time has elapsed, you're still safe, okay? So we'll do a test. What is your favorite color? What is your favorite color? Polling is not open. Very good. Okay. So what is your favorite color? The answer choice is A, black, B, brown, C, blue, D, green, E, orange, F, purple, G, red, H, yellow, I, white, J, other, if it's not included. So now, polling is now open. Indicates on the bottom right-hand corner how many seconds you have left. So you have about 20 seconds left to answer. About 15. Yeah. About 5. So, all right, polling is now closed. So we have a significant majority of you, not necessarily, we didn't run those numbers, but about 30% of you favor blue, actually kind of closely followed by purple, which is interesting. Consistently, the favorite color has been blue, if you're interested in that data. It's true. I don't know why, but it's just true. All right. So you get how it works generally? Great. Okay. So now we're going to go into our standard demographic data. In what geographic area is your primary home or residence located? A, St. Louis City, B, St. Louis County, C, St. Charles County, D, Jefferson County, E, Franklin County, F, St. Clair County, G, Madison County, H, Monroe County, and I is other. Polling is closed. Polling is now open. About 10 seconds left. Okay, about 70% of you reside in St. Louis County. Okay, next question. In what geographic area is your primary work and/or school? Now, if you're retired, you can pick other. A, St. Louis City, B, St. Louis County, C, St. Charles County, D, Jefferson County, E, Franklin County, F, St. Clair County, G, Madison County, H, Monroe County, and I is other. Polling is now open. All right, less than 10 seconds left. Okay, so we have, actually a majority is either you're in the city or the county you work or go to school, about 50% St. Louis City. Next question. With which gender do you identify? Please select one. A, female, B, male, C, other, D, decline. Polling is now open. About 10 seconds left. Those of you who just joined are invited to participate as well. Okay. 63% of us are female, 35% identify as male, 3% other. Next. In what age group do you belong? Select one. Now, I always like to say, just remind everyone that it's anonymous. We don't know what you're answering. Again, it's a safe space. You can decline, but you can also answer. So A, 21 and under. B, between 22 and 34. C, 35 and 44. D, 45 to 54. E, 55 to 64. F, 65 and over. G, decline. Polling is now open. Answers are coming in a little slower. I'm playing. About 5 seconds left. All right, okay. Okay, so 36%, 55 to 64, 18%, 65 and over. We have about 13%, 22 to 34. Generally, it seems like we have some spread. Thank you. Okay. How would you describe your ethnicity or race? A, white, B, black African American, C, Hispanic, Latino, or Spanish origin, D, Asian, E, American Indian or Alaskan Native, F, Native Hawaiian or Pacific Islander, G, other, H, decline. Polling is open. About 10 seconds left. Okay. About 6 out of 10 of you have identified as white, followed by about 33% of you African American or black. So this is the 13th meeting of the Ferguson Commission. How many previous meetings have you attended? Here we're distinguishing between small group meetings or working group meetings and these full commission meetings where I do polling and things like that. So how many previous meetings have you attended? A, none, so this is your first meeting. B, 1 to 2. C, 3 to 4. D, 5 to 6. E, 7 to 8. F, 9 to 10. G, 11 to 12. You've been in nearly all of them. Polling is now open. About 15 seconds left. About 5 seconds left if you haven't answered. Okay, polling's closed. About 50% of you, this is your first meeting. Welcome, welcome. And we have a couple of people that stuck in. All right, so how did you learn about today's meeting? Check all that apply. That means you have an opportunity to, answer, to press every button if you have every letter, so A through G, all of them apply, okay? And they'll lock all of them. So A, Facebook, B, Twitter, C, email, D, newspaper, E, radio, F, word of mouth, friend, coworker, relative, G, Ferguson Commission's website, SEOpositivechange.org is also known as, and then H, other. Okay, so press all that apply. Polling is open. About 15 seconds left. Okay, we have a spread. It looks like most of you heard via word of mouth. And then the next biggest portion is via email or the website. Thank you. Welcome. So now we're going to more content-related questions. And again, as it was stated, we're looking at trauma. So these questions, based on your own definition as well, but the first one is, have you experienced trauma or toxic stress? Note here that trauma or toxic stress is described as one-time or ongoing deeply disturbing experiences often brought on by physical, economic, cultural, emotional, or environmental assault. I think you can see that. Would anyone want me to repeat that definition? Okay. So have you experienced trauma or toxic stress as defined? A is yes, B is no, C, I don't know, and D is decline to respond. Polling is now open. About 10 seconds left. That's notable. So about 3/4 of us have experienced toxic stress or trauma. Do you think the community you live in has experienced trauma? Do you think the community you live in has experienced trauma? The same definition is applied. A, yes. B, no. C, I don't know. D, decline to respond. Polling is open. Five seconds left. 8 out of 10 of you responded yes, that the community you live in has experienced trauma. Do you believe someone can be traumatized by racism? The first answer is A, yes, followed by B, no, C, I don't know, D, decline to respond. About 20 seconds left. The polling is now open. About 10 seconds left. Amazing. I think this is one of the first times I've ever seen this. Everyone has responded yes, yet you believe that someone can be traumatized by racism. Okay. For the conclusion? Oh, okay, excuse me, a different question. This is a personal. Have you experienced any trauma due to racism? A, yes. B, no. C, I don't know. D, decline to respond. Have you? Polling is now open. About 10 seconds left. Okay. 6 out of 10 say yes. 4 out of 10 say no. From your experience, how many people in your community are coping with past trauma or toxic stress? It's an approximate, but A, very few in your view. B, some. C, a lot in your view again. Polling is now open. About 10 seconds left. About 5 seconds left. Okay. Over 50% of you say a lot. Approximate that as a lot. Please select the most applicable ending to this statement. Trauma and toxic stress are A, just a part of life in my part of town. We deal with it. B, not that big of a deal. People need to deal with their own problems. C, trauma and toxic stress are keeping our community from thriving. D, trauma and toxic stress are keeping me from thriving. So please select the most applicable ending to this statement. Polling is now open with 15 seconds left. Less than 10 seconds. Okay. 86% of us say it's keeping our community from thriving as a community. Okay. That concludes polling. Thank you so much for your honesty and transparency. This time, I'm going to give it to in the hands of our Managing Director, Bethany Johnson-Jaffois.
At this time, if facilitators would please take your positions. As was mentioned tonight, we're going to spend an hour of our time from 6:15 until 7:15 breaking into small groups. because it's very important for us to find a way. Has anyone heard of, forgot what the word is now, when you've been on information overload, and, fatigue is the word that I'm hearing. I've heard of Ferguson fatigue, but it's really broader than that. Every time we turn around, there's somebody, anybody know The Wiz, that brings us some bad news. And from that, there's only so much bad news that we can take. And there's only so much individually we can take, and there's only so much our community can take. So what we thought we would do for this time that we have together is to gather into small group to talk about 3 specific things. So I want you to look to your left, or to my left, and to the middle, and to the right. There are 3 breakout sessions with which you are able to pull your chairs and convene around these small areas. Each of these breakouts will have the exact same content, so you can select to go to any one that's the closest to you. Tonight we have Risa Easley. Risa, if you would please stand and wave. Risa is going to be, she's representing the St. Louis Mental Health Board, MSW, who is here tonight to help us to process. Joe Yancey from Places for People, if you would stand. Joe, thank you so much for coming, representing Places for People and the Resiliency Coalition. And third facilitator tonight is Regina Askew with Myrtle Hilliard Davis and the Resiliency Coalition. We have 3 facilitators, and this is how it will work. If you will pull your chairs into those 3 areas, you'll spend the first part of our time looking at common language, which we've presented in the polling and also on the flip chart papers for what trauma and toxic stress are and how they manifest. And then honestly, it's a time for conversation, however these small groups take it. And lastly, we want to ask you to confirm ways to build resiliency together. And as Reverend Wilson had mentioned earlier, building resiliency in terms of the Commission's legacy looks like ways that we can consider structural reforms, structural ways to minimize the effects of trauma and toxic stress, and tactical, literal ways with which we can work together. We have representatives from the Alive and Well movement to talk about some tactical steps. So at this time, I'm asking you to convene, breaking out into your small groups, to my left, to the middle, and to the right. Thank you so much for your time.
So I have been telling them that they should be plugged in for the upper spot. Ferguson Commission, are you guys doing anything on
We are. Actually, what we're doing, our next big block is housing and transportation.
So this would be the time.
Perfect time.
Hi. He wants a picture for record of.
Excuse me, if you still have a keypad in your possession, please raise your hand or point out a neighbor who does have a keypad. You can tell on them. We're collecting keypads at this time.
Mine's on my chair over there.